Can we get the first student team to get ready? So I'm just going to now introduce the student showcase. So this is the first, I think Dr. Sandberg said, this is our first ever NAI Student Innovation Showcase. The showcase is co-hosted by a bunch of institutions, who are the host institutions for this event. Brandeis, MIT, Northeastern, the UMass system. And in fact, Abby Barrow at the UMass system sort of led the planning for the student showcase. And it was kind of nail-biting. We put the request for applications in until about a week to the deadline. I think we had like one application. We said, oh my God, was this a good idea? And then in the last week, I think we got what, how many? 22 or something applications? So we got some really good teams applying. From them, we selected these 6 who are going to be competing against each other. And the criteria that they were presenting to were 4 things. One is novelty, as you would expect for an invention, potential benefit to society, potential for commercialization, so not just patenting for the sake of patenting, and lastly, technical feasibility, meaning could this actually be reduced to practice. And we have an august group of judges right in front of me, and I'm going to introduce them by name. I won't go through long biographies, but I'm sure they all have Wikipedia pages. So let me start on this side. Dr. Michael Sima from MIT, who is also a master inventor at MIT, and many companies launched with his inventions. And of course, Lisa will be a judge. Martin Matsuk from Baylor. Ellen Ochoa, who's an astronaut and yesterday became a fellow of NAI and is at the NASA Johnson Space Center. And then lastly, Andy Rathman Noonan, who's at the National Science and Technology Medals Foundation. And as I had mentioned earlier, there'll be 6 presentations, 10 minutes presentation, and students, I'm going to hold up a 3-minute card and then a 1-minute card. And then I'm going to gong you off at 10 minutes, and then there'll be 5 minutes of Q&A from the judges. And at the end of 6, we'll all go to the back, confer, come back with the winner in a few minutes. So let's start off with the first student presentation, and it's entitled Ultra Stretchable Conductive Polyester and Muscle Strain Sensor, and Ru Chen is the presenter. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, NAI, for giving me the opportunity to be here. And thank you all for coming. My name is Ru Chen. I am a NSF graduate fellow and also a 4th-year PhD student at University of Delaware, working for Dr. Norm Wagner. So today, the work I will be discussed is the stretchable conductive polymer we invented and also a device we designed based off this material. So stretchable materials has been really important in fundamental research due to the booming market about wearable technologies. However, in the business sector, most of the focus is on conductive materials with deformable shape. So what we want is we want to fill in a gap between the fundamental science and the business by creating a stretchable conductive material. So in our material design, to generate the stretchability for the material, we use block polymer, which can self-assemble into this long-ranged order structure and provide the mechanical strength. To generate conductivity, we use ionic liquid. We use ionic liquid for 3 reasons. First, it has high conductivity. Second, it has really low vapor pressure, meaning that it doesn't evaporate as water does. Third, it can support the self-assembly of the block polymer. The system that we are looking at is commercially available block polymer, F127, and a ionic liquid, ethyl ammonium nitrate. So our synthesis method only 2 steps. Step 1 is you mixing the polymer with the ionic liquid, and then you form a gel. We call this ion gel. And then you cast the gel into a mold. Under light-triggered photopolymerization, it will form an optically clear freestanding elastomer, and we call it ionoelastomer. So the commercialization potential involved in this step is that all the raw materials are inexpensive and commercially available. And the chemistry is very simple. The process is very easy, as you can see. And then this material synthesis is also commercially scalable. The photopolymerization is a commercially available tool, such as for ladies, when you do your drying your nail polish at home, the LED lamp you use is also a part of the photopolymerization process. And then the reaction is really robust. It arrives about 100% convergence and above 90% yield. So here are 2 videos demonstrating the conductivity of the material on the left, where the material is acting as a wire. The circuit, LED lights up when the circuit is closed. On the right, you can see the material exhibits stretchability. You can stretch it, you can twist it, and you can bend it. So to quantify the stretchability of the material, what we did was we stretched it in a stretching tool, as you see on the left video, and on the right is a synchronized engineering stress data plotted as elongation strain. You can see that material goes through a elastic behavior and eventually it breaks. The elongation at break is about 3,000% and the tensile stress about 200 megapascal. What does those number means? If we compare to a regular rubber band, this is the black curve is the rubber band. The rubber band looks like, meaning that our materials has about 10 times larger stretchability than a rubber band. So aside from this amazing stretchability of our materials, we also see an unexpected electrical performance. So for example, for a regular copper wire, if you deform the wire into a thinner and longer shape, according to this relationship, the resistance of the wire will increase, as shown on the left figure, plotted as normalized electrical resistance as a function of elongation strain. However, for our materials, as we stretch it, the resistance decreases as we stretch the material. And also the change is not as drastic as the copper wire. And these observations are really important, right, in business. For example, if the decreasing resistance, meaning that we have less energy loss, meaning longer battery life. And the change is not as drastic as copper wire, meaning that we can maintain or even improve the electrical performance throughout the wear and tear of the wearable electronics. So now we have made this material. Is there a market for it? So what I did was I attended a NSF I-Core site program hosted by University of Delaware last year and conducted 90 customer discovery interviews in 3 different fields. Advanced material, wearable electronics, and sensor for sports and rehab. So in the advanced material field, I interviewed 4 global chemical companies, DuPont, Gore, ExxonMobil, and Dow. Here I use a direct quote from Mr. Polanski, the global marketing director of Dow. The challenge for stretchable conductive material lies in how to reach high conductivity without compromising its high stretchability without compromising its conductivity. On the right is a stretchable conductive ink made by DuPont. Currently, the challenge is how to improve the stretchability of the ink without compromising its conductivity. In the wearable electronics field, we interview both technical and business expertise in global sports apparel companies, including Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, and Reebok. So the results are form factor-free wearable electronics. Electronics doesn't require a watch band or a shirt. It's the rising star of next generation wearable electronics. And also, as you see on the right, current wearable electronics only measures local body performance, such as heart rate, acceleration. So it follows that a material could measure local body performance, such as range of motions, is really important for, like, for example, basketball players for their posture monitoring. And for the sensors for sports and rehab field, we interviewed the technical expertise and also the end users, such as basketball players. Here is a direct quote from Professor Royer. The developments are demanded for creating smaller, lighter, and more comfortable rehab wearable systems that could provide accurate measurements. So based on this interview results, our goal is to design a sensor, and I call it muscle vector patch, MVP, which is the first form-free searchable body sensor that can measure a range of motions for athletes and rehab patients, assisting in injury prevention, performance analysis, and recovery tracking. So here is our minimal viral product prototype for our material, for our sensor. The material is attached to a glove, and then the change in the strain can be read out from a Bluetooth system showing on your phone app. So this is my Envision product. It's composed of two parts. The MVP plug, composed of the elastomer, and the MVP outlet is about full stem size, including the Bluetooth system and the battery. How it works is you assemble it like so, plug in the plug into the outlet, and then you attach it to different body parts. The commercialization potential here, I envision to sell the sensor as a toolkit. And then the commercialization potentials are all the raw materials and the electrical parts are already commercially available. And it's not very expensive. And it's very versatile. You can attach it to different body parts. And it can be used as form-free wearables. It can also be incorporated into your fabric. And it's customizable. So you can change the shape of the material by changing the mold, or you can add in the full dye to change the color of the film. And you can even put in some coordination compound, and it will give you luminescent effects. And you can DIY it at home. The process is very easy and very straightforward. So to summarize, MVP is the first searchable strain sensor that measures a range of motion. I have to address it's not a replacement to any of the current products. It is a complement to existing performance optimizing wearable technology. And with the increasing market size on wearable electronics and also sports field, MVP is a product that you should invest. And currently, we are working on incorporating those tracking metrics and improve the tech specs of the next generation prototype. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, that's working. Great talk.
Thank you.
You know, I think my question, you made a great case for a composition of matter patents because of the unusual properties, unexpected properties for this material. But my question is about the more medical application of muscle strain. How confident are you that local strain measurement is predicted of the clinical condition we call muscle strain, right? Because, you know, the muscle is usually large and strain can happen for inflammation at with the connective tissue at the ends. It's a kind of complicated situation. So have you looked into that?
Yes, I have looked into that. So to repeat the question is, how can the sensor provide accurate measurement of the local body performance? Am I getting your question right?
Well, no, I mean, when you say muscle strain,
right.
Are you talking about the clinical condition that you complain of? Oh, your doctor says you've just strained your muscle and take 2 aspirin or something like that. But, you know, is the local measurement really predictive of the inflammation that we call muscle strain?
The answer is no. So before I came out with the name of this muscle vector patch, I call it the muscle strain sensor. And I realized muscle strain is actually a clinical disease name for people who hurt their muscles. So it's different than that. So it's not providing to prevent the the injury of your muscle. But what it does is that it measures how much strain you strain your muscle instead of the clinical damage that you cause to your muscle. Yeah, I know the name is the same because in my turn I do rheology, so I'm not a medical person. So I didn't realize the strain, muscle strain, is actually a name. That's clinical name for the product. That's why I changed it later on to be muscle vector patch.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have kind of a related question, which is, so you're able to measure a measurement related to strain, then does it already exist where you can take that information and understand what it's telling you about what is actually going on? Like, so you really needed a material to give you that information. Can you already use that then with something else that exists to help make that information useful to whoever's collecting the data?
Yes. So we are still very early on the prototype developing, and we have our interview with the Delaware Health Center and also the Christiana Hospital. They have those data for patients who like the limit of each part of the body, how much can he sustain before the body get hurt. So with that data, we would like to build into our phone app or the computer system, so to provide a time-evolved strain curve. So you know, as you work out today in the gym, you know how much your muscle goes through the strain, and it will give you a warning when you reach the plateau. This is our goal, but I'm still on the developing stage for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much does it cost to make your little thing, and how much do you plan on selling it for? Have you thought about those kind of?
Yeah, I have a backup slide for that question. Oh, sorry, here. So the raw material cost is like, it's only the top, it's about like 69 cents. It's not that much. And then the electronics parts are pretty cheap too. What's expensive is the battery and the Bluetooth part. We are still working on, because this is the quote we get online. So I bet if we form a formal collaboration or call the company, we could be able to get a better price on that. So right now, the total variable cost come out to be $339. I don't know about the labor and all the other costs, but if I would guess, I would sell it around like $10, which is about, I guess Fitbit is about how much? 60, 100. So we are like 1/10 of their price, still in a very competitive position. Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a different question. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of the point of inspiration, sort of where you came to the conclusion that this was a need, and maybe any personal anecdotes that you might have, or sort of your own experiences getting to this point where this needs to be created?
So, so the question is, what's the purpose of the muscle vector patch?
No, more about sort of your own personal experience. Like, you've come up with a fantastic concept, and
Right.
as well as something that addresses a need.
Right.
But talk about sort of your own sort of personal concept of why this needs to happen, or your own personal experience for why it needs to happen.
So my personal experience. So in our, so to start off, first I go to the gym all the time, and then I do exercise, I do squats. I don't know if my phone is correct. So if I have something that can attach to me without all the wires connecting to the room, that would be amazing. So I can take it with me and go outdoor to do the exercise. I can use the strain sensor as an indicator to tell me if I do the simple, exercise in the right form. That's one thing. Second is that another thing is for my family member. My old grandparents, they having some joint inflammation, like their body having some issues, and they are always difficult in walking. And I see their rehab tools is always heavy to carry. And also, every time when they go to the hospital to do a diagnosis, they put like tons of wires connecting into their body. So I'm thinking, if I create something that doesn't require all the wires, everything is embedded in a small strip, isn't that nice? Especially for senior people, elders. That's much nicer. They can take it with them, go anywhere they want, go traveling. Yeah, to provide that's the answer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's have the next student presenter come up. So the next presentation is from Dartmouth College. It's photoelectron counting jot device and high-speed readout circuit for quanta image sensor. And JJ Ma is going to present.
Yes.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jiaju Ma. You can also call me JJ. I'm from Dartmouth College, and I'm a fifth-year PhD student. And my teammate Salim Masudian is sitting over there. And today we are going to talk about the photoelectron counting jot device and high-speed readout circuit for quantum image sensor. And how to use this?
The green button, I think.
And move forward.
The big green one,
This one?
the biggest one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. I hope that count the time.
It did count for your time, so you got to keep going.
All right. So the solid-state digital image sensor technologies already have about 50 years history. The first generation sensor, CCD, was invented in around 1970s. The second generation CMOS image sensor was invented in 1990s. And today we're glad to introduce you a third generation image sensor technology, quantum image sensor. And it can go beyond what we can do with CMOS image sensor today. And why do we need something that is beyond CMOS image sensor? The CMOS image sensor is doing great in many areas, and you can find it in many different applications. The total market value of the CMOS image sensor has reached over 10 billion this year. But there's some limitation of the CMOS image sensor, then it cannot perform very well in some areas. For example, in the low-light imaging areas, which include scientific imaging, low-light photography, and space imaging, and those areas need a sensor that has enough sensitivity to detect the signal from each single photon. And because of the relatively strong background noise of the CMOS image sensor, it cannot do that. And also the sensors with ultra-high resolution and can be read out at a very high speed, for example, 1,000 frames per second, with 1 gigapixel resolution is also in need. For the applications such as motion pictures and object tracking and also high dynamic range imaging. And also the image sensor technology nowadays has become something that is more than the technology we use to record the things we can see to something that help the computer to see things that human beings cannot see. So in this case, many applications such as security and computer vision and virtual reality, in those applications, how accurate the data from each single photon and how much flexibility we have during the data processing is a key. So you may wonder, is there any other sensors on the market that can do those jobs? The answer is no. There are some special sensors, which includes a SPAD, the single photon avalanche diode, and EMCCDs. They can do photon counting by using electron avalanche effect. And because of using that effect, those devices require very high operating voltages, which make them not compatible with a mainstream fabrication process. So the unit cell size is relatively large and the high resolution is not doable. And also because the avalanche effect is very sensitive to thermally generated electrons, so dark count rate for those devices are very high and external cooling is required for those sensors. And quantum image sensor was proposed in 2005, and the goal is to have 1 billion very tiny specialized pixel, and each one can detect the signal from each single photon. And the 1 billion pixels can be read out at a very high speed, for example, 1,000 frames per second. So each tiny specialized pixel in the QRS is called a jot. And the jot counts the number of incident photons and output binary signal reflecting no photon comes in, or at least one photon. And we have 1 billion of jots, and they can be read out at a very high speed to avoid the multiple hits on the same jot and the loss of accuracy of the counting. And in each exposure, we take continuous multiple frames. And so because each frame is taken at different time, we have the information for each single photon for the location and also the time of arrival. We have, in the image processing, we can use three-dimensional job bit cubicle with X, Y, and T dimensions. And the job data in that cubicle can be combined to create image pixels in grid scale to reflect the light intensity. And the great feature about QIS is because all the processing is done post-capture, so the way you use those data and the way you combine those data can be flexible. And because you have access to each single photon, so many different creation applications can be created based on this platform. And QIS was a think out of box concept, and it's not so easy to implement it. And me and my teammate Saleh have been working on the implementation of QIS for over 4 years. And we have filed more than 10 US patent applications over the years with different emphasis. My focus is on the jaw device development, and his focus is on the high-speed readout circuit. And first, I will talk about how I made the jaw device possible. And first, let's review the physics behind how we detect the photon in the image sensors. So the photons goes into the silicon and generate electron-hole pairs. The electrons are collected by the detector and transferred to a capacitor. And on the capacitor, the electrons are converted to a voltage signal. The voltage signal is proportional to the capacitance of the capacitor. You can look at the figure on the top. Because the voltage signal is read out through the subsequent readout electronics. And there is inevitable noise in those electronics, which is caused by thermal fluctuation. And the original signal from the photoelectrons should be like the red line over here, which is clear, and you can see the jump of voltage from each electron. And because of the noise, it becomes blurred and like the blue line. Imagine if you do a measurement here with a blue line, it's hard for you to tell if it's 1 electron, 2 electrons, or 0 electron. And look at the figure below. That is experimental data from our first generation jaw device. In this case, you can already see clearly that the signal generated by each single photoelectron. And how do we achieve that? Our approach is to make the capacitor here really tiny, so even 1 electron can generate very high voltage signal on it. The concept is very straightforward, but it's not easy to implement. And because this capacitor contains 5 major components, and each one is related to some important process during the photon detection. And you cannot just get rid of them. And this is one key invention I made, which can help to reduce a lot the parasitic capacitance from the MOS gate and to the output capacitor. And these are two other inventions I made to address another capacitance components in the output capacitor. And this device is also kind of like a JFET type device we use for the jaw device. And the goal is to reduce the capacitance further and also to reduce the thermal fluctuation so the noise will be also lower. And this is an invention made by my teammate Saleh, and the goal is to read out the 1 billion jaws very fast. And the idea is to take advantages of the trending stacking process in the CMOS and to fabricate the jaw devices on one wafer and fabricate the readout circuits on another, and bond those two wafers together afterwards. Because and in this case, we can divide the big 1 billion jaw array into very many small sections and call each section a cluster. And each cluster will have its dedicated readout units, and all the readout units can work in parallel. So that will help to improve the speed a lot and also can reduce the power. And with those ideas, we fabricated a prototype chip last year, and those are the results we got. First, we demonstrate the photoelectron counting without using the avalanche effect at room temperature. And how do we know that? Because we look at the distribution of the jaw signal. And you can see because the photons are randomly distributed in space, so sometimes in each capture you can get 0 photon, 1 photon, it's random. And by measuring the distribution, you can see each beam here is corresponding to a signal level generated by a different number of electrons. And because of the noise is so low compared to the signal in our case, you can see the beams are really quantized.
All right, I think I got to cut you off here.
Wait,
Your 10 minutes is up.
I can go very quick, 2 minutes.
You're done. Questions from the judges?
You mentioned that you had filed 10 patents. Are any of those now approved?
Yeah, one of them is
Okay.
approved.
And for the other ones, are there issues with them when the examiner has looked at them?
Not as I know of. So they're still in the examination process, but we haven't heard any issues.
And as an inventor of this technology, how do you compete with a company like Nikon, which I'm guessing that they are very much interested in similar types of work?
Yeah, so the big companies like Nikon and Canon and also Sony, they're still focused on the CMOS image sensor, and it's a much bigger market. And I'm going to talk about this later in my slides. So in the initial state, we already founded a company named GigaJot Technology, and we are going to commercialize this technology. And initially, we're going to focus on some niche market of the sensor applications, such as scientific imaging, which those big guys are not taking care of right now. And also in the future, we're looking to maybe compete with them, but not now.
How do you prove infringement on this invention? Like, how can you tell that somebody is doing what you're doing?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So one of the big questions we always get is, how do you prove someone's infringing on your invention? You know, how do you, get the licensing potential out of it, or sue somebody if they're actually using your idea? And it seems like a lot of what you've showed has been low level, at the very chip level. If someone were to take apart a chip, can you tell
Right.
that they're infringing on your idea?
Some of them can be told very easily from the top chip level, and some of them need some maybe SEM scanning to see the exact details.
So tell us about the market potential. Put up that slide.
And by the way, this is a single photon
No,
photo
go
taken.
go straight to the market potential.
So those are the markets we're going to focus on in the early stage, which is scientific imaging, automotive, space. And we have done the market research and the analysis, and based on that, we have the expectation of the market share we can get based on our technology and compare our technology with the existing ones.
And is the idea for GigaJot to be a provider of the device to other
Right.
people who will then incorporate it into their products?
Yeah, so our idea now is to do custom design for maybe camera makers and also other sensor makers, not sensor maker, camera makers or device makers.
Any other questions from the judges? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have the next student presentation. This is plant-based decellularization from Joshua Gerslak of Worcester Polytechnic Institute, or WPI. Joshua.
Okay, so I just want to thank you all for inviting me to be a finalist for this competition. Again, my name is Josh Gershlak. I'm from WPI. I'm a PhD student in the Glenn Gaudet lab. So, there are more than 100,000 patients on the organ transplant list at any given time. You can see in this chart right here, in pink, we have the waiting list. Blue, we have the transplants that are given. In yellow, we have donors. And you can notice those blue and yellow lines remain relatively flat, whereas the pink is growing pretty exponentially over time. And that gap is ever increasing, and there's about 22 people who die each and every day while waiting for a transplant. Tissue engineering as a field, very much a hotbed for research, has the potential to lessen this gap by creating new organs and tissues in the lab. But there's still a lot of pitfalls affecting tissue engineering in terms of their clinical translation. And so in our opinion, the major limiting factor of tissue engineering is the lack of a viable vascular network. So when we're looking to create tissue, we need to be able to overcome an 100 to 200 micron diffusion limit of oxygen and nutrients to be able to feed the tissue that we're making. Current biofabrication techniques, as great as they are, such as 3D printing, just don't have the resolution to be able to get down to this fine level that we need to be able to really fully feed the tissue. And so we need a better solution. One such field of research that researchers are looking into is called decellularization. This process removes all cellular material from a tissue and organ. So in the picture on the top right, we have a heart that's being decellularized through some detergents. And you can see on the left, it starts kind of pinkish reddish, and over time it turns opaque. And over time, the cellular material is removed, leaving behind just the extracellular matrix components and the hierarchical structure. So theoretically, what we could do is recellularize, so put in a patient's own cells into these scaffolds and have a patient-specific graft. However, with decellularization, and we're looking into using human tissues and organs, they're very short in supply, very expensive and variable. The chart on the bottom right is just a quick study looking at the change of composition of extracellular matrix over development. And this reigns true between tissue types and species. So we're thinking, what if we were able to decellularize something more sustainable and controllable? Maybe we'll be able to improve our prospects. And so one day, me and my boss were having lunch, and we saw a piece of spinach. And what stood out to us was that vascular network of the spinach. It looked striking. Me and my boss, we both have experience with hearts, and that network on there just looked just like what we would expect to see in the tissue that we would want. And so we did a little bit deeper diving. And on the left, I have a decellularized rat heart with the vasculature that I flowed through with the red dye. And on the right, I have a plant with a fluorescent label attached to the vasculature. And we went look on these micro scales. This branching pattern is very, very similar. And it's on the same size scale. These are both, roughly 100 microns in diameter. And so we started to dive a little bit deeper, more into the research. We found that the vasculature of the plants follows the same physiological law that our cardiovascular system follows. Cellulose, which is the major component of plants, is an extensively studied biomaterial for a wide variety of medical applications. It's been shown to be biocompatible and also promote wound healing. Oops. And so we wondered, could we take advantage of the plant as a pre-vascularized scaffold for tissue engineering? And so my background and my advisor, we have an extensive experience doing decellularization of hearts. And so the other part of the spinach leaf that really stuck out to me was the long stem. When we perform decellularization on the heart, we take a needle and we stick it through the aorta to perfuse through detergents. And so the stem reminded me of the aorta, and so we approached it the same way. And so we took inspiration from these heart decellularization, found the cannula, the pedicle of the spinach leaf, which is the large opening in the stem, and cannulated that with a needle. And by modifying some of the detergents that we would use in normal heart decellularization, we were able to, over 5 days, remove plant DNA and cellular materials, and over the course of 7 days, fully sterilize the tissue and have it be completely transparent. And so this is all good. We've been able to do this in a wide variety of plants. So I have some pictures here of spinach, parsley stem, peanut hairy roots, and Artemisia annua. Our colleagues at the University of Wisconsin, this is a collaborative effort. They literally have gone to an arboretum and picked leaves off of trees and decellularized those. This process seems to be pretty universal. And so we want to investigate whether or not, we're able to remove the DNA, we're able to turn leaves transparent. Are they really possible candidates to be used as a tissue engineering scaffold? And so the first thing we wanted to look at was whether or not the vascular patency is retained after the decellularization. And so in this first video that's playing, that should hopefully loop through, we flow through a red dye through the vascular network. And on the right, you can see a blow up after it's been perfused. And it's still that striking similarities. And so we also wanted to measure whether or not these size scales would be prevalent to a human body. So we flowed through different sized microparticles of varying diameters to measure the vascular network size. And what we found was that microparticles that were smaller than 10 microns flowed through completely. And why that 10 micron number is important is because that's the size of red blood cells. So theoretically, we could flow through red blood cells and blood through these materials. And so that's good. We have the ability to theoretically flow through blood. The other part of tissue engineering and the scaffold in general is to be able to get cells to attach and to survive on the scaffold. And so we were able to recellularize these decellularized spinach leaves with different human cells. This first picture in the red, it's probably hard to see, are endothelial cells, which are the cells that line in the inner portions of your blood vessels. We were able to get to the inner portions of the leaf vasculature. We were able to get widespread attachment of mesenchymal stem cells or adult stem cells to the surface of the leaf. And then most impressively, let's show up, we were able to get cardiomyocytes. So these are human pluripotent stem cell derived cardiomyocytes to attach and contract and also have normal calcium activity. So these are both markers of their normal function. And we're able to measure this over the course of over 21 days. And so outside of using, all this kind of cool, just taking from the ground and using it for, medicine, there's also some additional benefits of using plants. There's current push in tech to become more green and environmentally friendly. Tissue engineering scaffolds are typically animal or synthetic derived, and those both have huge, large costs and environmental impacts. Plants can be grown using good agricultural practices, and we could push the medical research space into something that's more environmentally friendly, which it really isn't. And so we see potential commercialization. I have two listed up here, tissue engineering marker, where we would license these out to other researchers. Also the drug screening market, where pharmaceutical companies want a viable mimic of a human capillary bed. And so they would be able to have a sustainable material that is pretty high throughput. And an added benefit to the pharmaceutical companies is that they could promote that they've moved towards more sustainable practices in drug development. And so speaking of promotion and PR, this story recently went viral. We were a trending moment on Twitter for 2 days, had a lot of great tweets, which led to a lot of mainstream media exposure for this work. Along with the exposure, we do have the provisional patent was filed, and it's been converted to a PCT filing. And so in summary, we're able to take a normal plant, decellularize it, leaving behind this blank vascular scaffold that we can get both single and clustered cells to function on the surface, and that vasculature remains patent so that we can flow through and provide nutrients to those cells. And so I just want to give some acknowledgments to some coworkers. This was a collaborative effort between us at WPI, University of Wisconsin, and Arkansas State University, as well as some funding sources, and then I welcome questions.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned, you got your inspiration from spinach,
Yeah.
and then it's been shown other plants could be useful too. Have you developed any kind of, figures of merit that would say, well, what plants would you really want to target? What
Yeah.
are you really looking for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's something that has always been kind of, in terms of trying to commercialize this, I think what we'd want to do is kind of make a handbook or make like a manual and kind of go and investigate which plant would work well with which body part. Coincidentally, spinach, just because it was the inspiration, I believe would work really well with cardiac tissue. It's very well vascularized. We did some mechanical analysis and found that it had the same mechanical properties as human myocardium. And so if we were able to kind of develop this into a patch, we could, alleviate symptoms of a myocardial infarction, as an example. But we've also started to look into bamboo. It's long, hollow, and strong, and could pose as a bone graft. But really just what's great about plants is they've gone through hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, so there are really endless possibilities with them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a really novel idea, and I congratulate you on it. And I think that, you said one of the applications was for drug screening in vitro, and I think that that's very reasonable. But if you're thinking about putting tissue back in the body and you have a matrix that is from plants, you would think that that would cause an immune response. And so how have you thought about addressing that problem?
So we have started doing some biocompatibility studies to look at that, looking into cytotoxicities and also other normal lab practices. The material of cellulose in general, it's been used in wide variety of medical applications. It's been used, granted, what's been used has been a more purified form of cellulose that's been typically derived from bacteria. So yes, we're kind of taking it literally from the ground, and there's other parts of the leaf that aren't just cellulose, but those have all been found previously to be biocompatible. But those are studies that we need to do.
Just to sort of piggyback on that question, so as of right now, you listed sort of 2 commercially viable applications. Which do you think is sort of the most viable right now, or given your current research status?
So I'm always more interested in the tissue engineering. That's like what my background is. But in terms of using that as a kind of a platform for commercialization, I don't think that's probably the most viable. I would think that drug screening would probably be the right first form of action. If we were to stick with tissue engineering, I wouldn't want to go directly to the heart just because of how hard it is to get something like that through the FDA. So we'd want to look into something using like skin, because the cellulose does have the wound capabilities and it is vascularized. So skin, I would think, would be at least a good jump start.
Awesome, thank you. So let's have the next student presentation. This is CoreWave from Arizona State University. And Patrick McFarland, I believe, is the presenter.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick McFarland. I'm the founder and CEO of CoreWave, and I'm a biomedical engineering student at Arizona State University. Around the age of 12, one day I was babysitting my little sister. As I was watching her, she called out to me, saying she couldn't see anything. Thinking she was joking, I just let it go, but a short time later, she again calling out, saying she couldn't see anything. At that point, I became concerned and went to go check on her, and sure enough, she couldn't see. Not knowing what to do, I took her downstairs, where a short time later, she went to a full convulsive seizure. I watched in terror as for 15 minutes, this seizure continued. After that point, our little family changed forever. My mom had to quit her career to care for my sister full-time. We suffered financially, and my little sister, around the age of 4 at the time, went from bright and happy to withdrawn and quiet. I learned something from these experiences, and that was that kids with epilepsy have no independence, and the parents that care for them are constantly stressed out. CoreWave works by continuously monitoring the patient's brain activity. When a seizure happens, CoreWave detects it and then notifies the caretaker. If the seizure lasts for too long, CoreWave will contact 911 and provide them with the location and the medical information of the patient. And at the end of each month, CoreWave creates a digest of seizure activity and then securely sends it to the patient's neurologist for review. CoreWave gets kids with epilepsy a greater sense of independence and safety with our seizure monitoring and caretaker notification technology. With our solution, the need for continued supervision can be significantly reduced by up to 12 hours, providing parents with a much-needed break. Additionally, parents are frustrated with the way epilepsy is currently treated. They see their child have seizures every day and the effect it has on them, but because the child only sees the neurologist for 15 minutes once every 3 months, the doctors just don't get that same picture. And because of that, proper treatment can be delayed for years, on average about 10. With a record of seizure activity, CoreWave provides data to the neurologist that they wouldn't otherwise have, which will improve treatments and patient outcomes. Families need CoreWave. Right now, we have over 400 people signed up on our website for CoreWave. In addition, we have a large social media following of over 3,500 followers, generating over 12,000 impressions on a weekly basis. All of this with $0 in paid advertising. Plus, the market size for epilepsy is a very big one. There's over 150,000 new cases diagnosed each year, 750,000 kids in the US, 5.1 million people total, generating over a market of over $500 million, and 65 million people worldwide. The worst part is, though, is that epilepsy is an underserved market. Despite having 6 times as many patients as Parkinson's, they only receive 25% of the funding. And 80% of that funding goes towards treating the symptoms and not understanding the causes of this disease. Right now, we have our business model is to sell the hardware unit right here for $329 a piece with a 2-tiered monthly subscription plan. We intend to start through our website, move to the neurology clinic, and eventually to retail locations. There are some potential challenges along the way, one being that the FDA rejects or delays our 510(k) filing. We're working on that right now by working with the FDA currently and regulatory affairs specialists to help make sure that doesn't happen. Additionally, there could be some issues with clinical trial costs, but again, we're working with them as that on well. We've gone through 3 generations of prototype. The first generation was a helmet. It worked well, but the parents said to us, the kids aren't going to wear this. So we went back to the drawing board. Then we came up with our second generation, which was around the head, which the parents said was closer, but we still needed to move a little bit closer. And so now this is our current generation prototype. For the females, we have a headband, and for the males, we have wireless headphone options, or also a thing that can fit underneath a ball cap. Like I said, this is our current iteration. We went from a bulky, ugly helmet to something that's sleek, modern, and discreet. We have worked on our mobile app as well. It's currently in beta testing. Basically can show the medical information, such as the medicines that the patient's currently taking, drug allergies. It shows live streaming of the EEG data, and then it can show the caretakers that will be alerted as well. We filed a provisional patent back in October of last year, and we're going to be patenting fully our technology here soon. We do have some competitors along the way. There's Embrace, which is a wristwatch, but I would say using a wristwatch to detect seizures is kind of like using a wristwatch to detect a heart attack. It's possible, but not quite there yet. There's the Zeto, which is not designed for home use. It's obvious and unattractive, and one of the issues that it would stigmatize the users. And of course, there's a current brain monitoring solution, which, as you can see, is very cumbersome. It has to be used in a hospital, and you need a human to supervise it at all times. Currently, there's myself and my team member, Trung. I'm a biomedical engineering student, like I said, at ASU. He's an electrical engineering student there as well. We have a strong advisory board. We have doctors from Mayo Clinic. We have the chief pediatric neurologist of Barrow Neurological and Phoenix Children's Hospital. And then we have an advisor from Oxford Bioscience Partners. And I will leave everyone with this. How different would our lives have been and the millions of lives of those with epilepsy with CoreWave? Thank you.
Judges?
Yeah, it was really, really great.
Thank you.
Use case is spectacular and all of that. But can you talk a little bit more about the regulatory hurdle you see here? And, you know, there's a couple of different things, you know, the predictive value of your measurement and then the I'd like to hear you about how you do that clinical study. And then the other side is, the HIPAA requirements for using, cell phones for patient data.
Absolutely, and those are great questions. So we plan on filing CoreWave as a Class 2A medical device with the FDA through a 510K filing. Some of the regulatory hurdles that we're going to face is proving that the seizure detection software works, and also that that the device can remain in a general location, so kind of just stay where it is. It doesn't move around too much. Those are the kind of ones that we identified early on. As far as the HIPAA compliant information, what we're doing right now is everything is encrypted to the HIPAA compliant standard. So the information that streams from CoreWave to the cell phone is all encrypted, and then immediately back to our servers, which are also HIPAA compliant. Right now, we're working with a provider that uses Amazon Web Services, and they actually just recently passed a Health and Human Services audit to show that they are HIPAA compliant with the way they handle the PHI. So that's something that we were very thoughtful of, and that's something that we're definitely addressing right now.
And just on the clinical study, how big of a trial is that?
So we were going to begin bench testing. We've gone to the first step, and then we would need to do animal testing. As far as human trials, I'm not quite sure that we would need to do those. Looking at the predicate devices that are similar to CoreWave, none of them required human trials, so it looks like we'd just be doing
Really?
bench and animal testing. Yeah, because it's a low-risk device, right? It's not like a blood glucose monitor where if you're wrong, you can overshoot on the insulin, right? It's just a passive detection device. There's a lot lower risk associated with it.
Yeah, but the question there is, and I see this in other products, is you are telling the parent, don't worry about your child, leave them alone. And I mean, there's a lot of advantages to that, but again, the child has been diagnosed with epilepsy. They could get into trouble without the supervision. So, is it really, is it not a life support device? Is the question.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not a life support device. And the current paradigm with seizures is that you don't do anything when a seizure happens. You just need to know that the seizure happened. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of seizures are benign. They last anywhere from a couple of seconds to 2 minutes. And again, there's nothing that you do for the seizure, even if it's a convulsive one. The only time that you would really need a response would be if the seizure lasted over 5 minutes, which is a term called status, and it's a very dangerous condition that you need to go to the hospital for. So that would be like the only active issue with like the life support that we would need to do with CoreWave. Otherwise, it's just a passive, like letting the child know. And because most of the time the child's already at school or at the park or with their friends anyways, so it's just a matter of letting the parent know that it happened and then providing that EEG data to the doctor.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the somewhat depressing statistic of 15 minutes every 3 months with a neurologist. So I get the feeling they're not really used to seeing very much data.
That's correct.
And so I guess one of my questions is, do you anticipate the bigger use, other than the 15-minute concern, but for most of the data being with the family's actual doctor and really expecting him to look through a lot of data, or do you think there's the bigger use is sort of the more long-term database that is collected, which can then be used by researchers and potentially hope for a more of a cure?
Absolutely, and that's actually our second value proposition. The first one being to the family. The second one is the data collection. Right now, the biggest database that's publicly available is only 5,000 patients. Again, there's 65 million people in the world with this disease. There's just not enough data. I mean, right now we use rats, we use fish. That's not the human analog. And so what we're trying to do right now is gather that data. I mean, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 patients wearing CoreWave for 12 hours per day for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Magnitudes of order of more data available for that. That can actually drive that research, drive new drugs, and maybe even be able to predict or end seizures altogether. So that's our second use case.
Can you walk me through your onboarding process for a patient or someone who's using CoreWave on the app? And then also, are the monthly fee, that's sort of the responsibility of the patient itself, or are you looking to sell subscriptions to various clinics on the back end as well?
Great, yes, there's two ways we can go about this. The first one being through having the patient pay for it. We are looking at reimbursement because EEGs obviously are reimbursable. That's not really the issue. It's more of basically how much out of pocket, like you said, that the patients would pay for. Our current kind of position that we're in right now is having the patients pay for that. And the reason being is that that's kind of more of a value that's brought to them than rather to the clinic. There is value to the clinic, but that's kind of later on. So right now, the patient would have the most value for this. One other option that we were looking at, we're selling these to the clinic and having the clinic kind of like rent them out, per se, because there is a very healthy reimbursement for doing EEGs. It's well over several $100s for that. So there are two different ways we're looking at. We're still very early stage, so that is one thing we're exploring. But right now, we've had a lot of success with the patient-sided part of it.
So I have a quick question. So, I mean, EEG sensors are fairly common.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your primary claim in the patent application?
So it's the novel way that we're using it, right? We're using EEGs in a wearable format that can detect seizures and then report the data. So it's not, you know, it's like tires, right? Like putting a tire on a car versus a truck. Like there's different ways you can do it, but what we're doing is in a novel way. That's the claim that we made, so.
Great, thank you. So let's have the next student. It's titled ElectroPure. It's from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and it's Julie Bliss Mullen.
So make sure this is. I'm sorry, is this the clicker?
The big green button on that.
Perfect, great. Hi, so my name is Julie. I'm part of a team of ElectroPure. So I'm a PhD candidate at UMass. I'm also partnering with an MBA student. He's kind of taking care of the business side. And then I work in Dave Reckhouse lab at UMass. And so in our lab, we've come up with a novel way to treat water. And really, it's tunable, it's maintenance-free, and it's comprehensive, and it'd be installed in in-home water systems. There we go. So there's a major problem with in-home water treatment systems right now. The first is it's too expensive, and I'm talking about comprehensive treatment systems, like something like our reverse osmosis system that you might be able to put into your home for whole house treatment, not just for the faucet. So they're too expensive. They're maintenance heavy, meaning that there's filter replacement that has to take place yearly or every so often. They're failing to remove most organic or most contaminants. For example, organics, microbes, metals. We haven't really found anything that is comprehensive with that cost and maintenance. The other thing is that they're not accommodating to taste. And what we mean by this is everybody has their own taste in terms of if you drink well water or public water, which is chlorinated, in which case with our system we're able to work with the homeowners so that they can tune their taste so that they are, you know, they're drinking what they would like to drink. So we've come up with a solution. This is a prototype that we have right now. The way it works is you would plug it into an outlet, and electricity is used to create different oxidants. And so, as compared to a current reverse osmosis system, for example, which is the most similar in terms of removal efficiency, it's 5 to 10 times less expensive. It does not require any filter replacement. And when I say that, there's a material inside where that's the anode or the electrode, is the key component of the technology, and it self-regenerates. So there's no scaling, in which case it's cleaning. You don't have to replace any filters. What's really nice for homeowners is that you have this peace of mind. So it removes pathogens, it removes organics, it will treat metals, and it can be tuned, as I said before. So how does it work? So inside of here, as I was talking about, there's an electrode, and that's where all the really cool chemistry happens. So there are 3 types of oxidants that are formed. Without being too specific, there are certain contaminants that have more of an affinity for treatment with the 3 types of the oxidants. So the first is direct electron transfer. Second is indirect oxidants, what I mean is production of things like ozone and hydrogen peroxide and chlorine, for example, if there's chloride in the water. And then there are things called advanced oxidants, and that's one of the major selling points of this is if you have a pharmaceutical or a pesticide or some kind of solvent, say MTBE or 1,4-dioxane, those are all common organics, specifically around Massachusetts, but really around the United States. A filter or a device like this would be able to treat those contaminants. So I was saying before, you would plug it into an outlet, and there would actually be a sensor just downward from the treatment. So water this would be plugged in right into your pipes. Water flows through, is treated. There's no waste, no brine, and it continues through. And it's actually connected to a sensor with a feedback loop. And so the sensor will say, okay, there's enough oxidants in the system so that the treatment is adequate. If it's not, it'll turn it on, and it'll turn it off as needed, and so that will save energy. When I say energy too, the highest voltage that we've tested is 10 volts, in which case it could run on really a 9-volt battery. It could also be used with a solar panel. So you're probably asking about what the competition is out there. So most people know about Brita filters and maybe some other carbon adsorption filters, but what's really interesting about this device is, as I said before, it disinfects, removes organics, it's tunable, it improves the taste, and it's extremely inexpensive to manufacture. So we're saying a capital cost of $1,000. That's with about 30 to 50% revenue. And so you can compare it to adsorption, ion exchange, reverse osmosis, which I said is most similar. And even with reverse osmosis, you can see how it compares with all the other functions. So talking about the market opportunity, the in-home water filtration devices, the market is $1.5 billion, and it's projected to grow in 2 years by more than 5%. So right now, if we're just targeting Massachusetts homeowners, there's a demand of in-home water treatment systems of about 27%. And this is based off of a Mintel consumer report and a couple of other reports that we've read. And also based off of customer discovery. There's a demand for in-home water treatment of 27%, and with a selling price of $1,000 and a market share of only a percentage of that 27%, just in Massachusetts, we would have a revenue of $3.3 million in sales. So you can imagine with just this market here, how that could expand through the United States and internationally. So we've conducted customer discovery. We have about 50 interviews so far, and we've identified 2 promising first markets. The first is in-home water treatment suppliers. So we're in contact with 2 right now. One is out of Charlton, Massachusetts, and the other one is out of Walpole, and they're very interested in licensing our technology to sell. So their value proposition really is that it's a better, if not best, treatment solution for in-home water treatment right now, and they feel like there's a significant impact. Customers would have peace of mind, as I was saying before, longer-lasting household appliances. Some owners of reverse osmosis systems cite that they, or maybe even not an owner, someone who's maybe interested in it, are hesitant sometimes to buy something like a reverse osmosis system because it does remove the minerals which might degrade pipes, in which case this does not do that. So there's annual cost savings and ease of maintenance. Second and relatively interesting market would be luxury home builders, in which case they would we would sell directly to them, and they would install the systems right into homes. And it seems like about 75% of new home new homeowners are requesting some kind of whole house treatment system. And so there's a very significant market for that right now. So In terms of progress, we've proved that it works in the lab. We've tested it with tap waters, and we're very confident that the technology works. So now we're moving to develop new prototypes and to test them in homes. So we have industrial collaborators right now for the key material in here, in which case there would be 2 suppliers. We've also been accepted into an accelerator program this summer. We're continuing customer discovery, and we're seeking investors and applying for grants. In a year from now, actually in about a couple weeks, we're planning to form an LLC. As I said, we want to create 5 prototypes, and we're also going to get design consulting for those. We'll evaluate those at homes. We plan to execute our first sale, hopefully by the end of the summer, at the end of the accelerator. In 5 years, as I said before, we're planning to sell to suppliers and also to luxury home builders. And the market is much larger than that. I mean, we're talking with FEMA, we're talking with international organizations. So there's a great opportunity for this to commercialize. So thank you very much.
So, just to sort of bring it up to speed in current events,
Sure.
I immediately think of the Flint water crisis. Can you speak to sort of, I guess, the stress test that would go into making sure that a device of this kind could handle sort of the, I would say, unacceptable. I mean, unacceptable is I would say understatement, but I would say just sort of, can you speak to sort of the stress test that you plan to put this device through in order to maybe address the crisis that's going on in Flint? Yeah.
So I'll speak here. So I think that's a loaded question for sure. The first is with the technology specifically, and then I'll get into the robustness part. So there are sensors that will be able to kind of identify the extent of treatment necessary. So if you have lead, in which case the lead levels in Flint were, I think, in the hundreds of ppm, which is crazy, in which case there would have to be a filter, a post filter to catch the lead particulates. But that's something where we would have a sensor right at the end, so as soon as you start to see any kind of breakthrough whatsoever, we would contract with the suppliers and to change those filters. In terms of the testing for robustness, we actually just pitched last night, and we were able to get some money for design consulting so that we can improve on our prototypes. They'll do some robustness testing so that we can move forward and be confident that this is something that is implementable.
So you touched on, one of the things I was going to ask on was particulates as being an important part of this. But I'm still missing on the science of dissolved metals and how this actually works. You mentioned it gets oxidized.
Sure,
I would thought you need to reduce to turn it to a solid.
So no, the metals are oxidized. So for example, lead. Lead would be from lead 2 to lead 4.
I see.
And then it would precipitate as a hydroxide. And so that would form the particulates. But we're not necessarily, if we know that a household has lead or really high levels of copper or some other iron, for example, there would have to be a post filter. And that would
Oh, I
catch
see. So the solid that's produced doesn't stay on the electrode.
No, it does not scale, in which case we figure out a way for it to not scale, exactly. And it would
okay.
have to be caught in a subsequent filter.
I see.
How often do you have to replace them?
So we have projections, because we've been running in the lab for about 2 years. It would be about 20 years, likely. So we don't see a foreseeable change in this, about 20 years. Yeah.
You mentioned potentially doing some licensing deals. Have you thought about what that looks like for you all, like what the licensing deal could come out to look like?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure specifically.
So are you going to take a percentage of sales from whoever you license your technology to?
Yes, that's right. We haven't really gone through that as much. We're working through that for sure.
Any other questions from the judges? You're entering into a consumer market, and consumer markets are always brutal.
Absolutely, yes.
And so, one question to really answer is Massachusetts the first place to start, or maybe it's somewhere where they have
Right,
worse
so,
water
so it's
problems.
also tough about certifications, is you have to get a certification for each state, and then it's federal, and so, we're all from Massachusetts, and these are, a lot of the customer discovery I haven't done it is here, but we have we have talked with luxury home builders from across the country. We could easily, assuming we can get the permits to move forward, we could easily deploy in Flint, Michigan, or maybe outside of some kind of natural disaster, maybe Haiti or something along those lines, in which case we'd probably partner with FEMA or USAID or, and that would be our customer, so, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And then our final student presentation is called Traffic Stop from the University of Florida. And we have 4 presenters coming up: Michelle Imamdi, Jessica Jones, Isabel Lorenzo, and Dakita Moon.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. Excuse my voice, but my name is Jessica Jones. These are my colleagues, Michelle Imamdi, Isabel Lorenzo, and Dakita Moon. And today we will be talking about virtual traffic stop, which is our invention that intends to keep officers and civilians out of harm's way. So imagine a scenario. You're a college student on your way to an exam, and you see that big red stop sign in front of you, and to you that means just pause. Yes, sorry. To you that means, I thought I was loud enough. To you that means just pause and then keep rolling. You look in your rear view mirror and you see the police lights on. So how this works currently, of course none of you do rolling stops. How this works currently is the officer turns on his lights and he pulls you over to the side. There may or may not be a shoulder for him to stand on. He is in the way of oncoming traffic. He approaches your vehicle, you're nervous, your hands are shaking, you're sweating. He gives you, you have a discussion, he gives you a ticket, he gets back in his car in the way of oncoming traffic, and you continue to drive slowly and cautiously to your exam. So there are several issues with this current procedure. Officers and civilians face both perceived and real dangers from one another, from the weather, and from the environment. As I said, there may or may not be a shoulder for the officer to stand on. There may be a language barrier between the officer and the driver. Imagine getting your license and you're still learning the English language. Imagine being pulled over for the first time by a police officer. And there's no current way to involve third parties. For example, if you don't speak English, how are you going to communicate with the officer that you're talking with?
And so just to go over the problems again, a statistic provided by the FBI is that 17% of officers feloniously killed in the line of duty were killed during traffic stops, so that's definitely a number that we are concerned about. And additionally, 5% of officers killed in the line of duty were killed accidentally during traffic stops. And so that's just a very large proportion of the total officers being killed. And we wanted to address that, and additionally the concern of imposter police officers, especially as women driving at night. And I was taught not to pull over on a dark road if I'm somewhere. Go to where it's light. Go to where you can be seen if anything happens. And so we want to address that, and again the language barrier. So virtual traffic stop is a application that drivers would download and police officers would have integrated into their systems that would allow them to communicate during a traffic stop. And what it is not, it's not something that will force officers to stay in their cars during a traffic stop. If they find anything to be suspicious during their interaction with the driver, they can definitely leave their vehicle to further investigate using their normal protocols. And it is also not meant to prevent any interaction between the officers and their community. We still want the officers to feel part of the community, and we still want the civilians to feel like their officers are there for them to protect them.
So I want to go back to Jessica's scenario, but this time both the officer and the driver are using traffic stop. So the driver is still rushing to the exam, they roll through that stop sign, and they see the officer pull up behind them. They pull off to the side of the road, hopefully a shoulder, but maybe not. This time the officer just puts in the driver's license plate, and while he's doing that, the driver, is logging onto the app and selecting which car they are driving in case they have multiple vehicles, so the officer knows exactly who is driving that car at what time. After that, the driver can send all of their information through a secure network that we have established. This includes registration, insurance, their driver's license, as well as a selfie to verify that they are who they claim to be. Once the officer sees all this information, they can verify it and then initiate a video conference. This video conference can then include somebody else, a third person, as we mentioned. This third person will be entered securely into the video conference, and once the officer has been able to express what they want to say and has potentially issued a warning or really just told the driver what they need to say, both driver and officer can pull away and they are safely in their car. How it works, as I mentioned, we have a secure connection, so nothing is stored. We don't store your information, we don't store the video chat. We also are using API UVU. This is how we do video conferencing. This is an API that is well known throughout different companies and is very well respected.
So we think about how good this can be used, or the different scenarios that the virtual traffic stop can be used in. So these are some of the things. Imagine you're being on a dark roadway. Again, as we said, you're a woman, not in a well-lit area, or your daughter, things of that nature. Just some scenarios that you can imagine being in. As a driver, you're not sure whether or not there's a police officer behind you. You can see the lights, but again, there's so many things that's happening around today. You want to be sure of the situation that you're getting yourself into. Same scenario as the officer. You don't know who is in the car in front of you. And again, everybody just wants to get home safe. So this is a way for the officer as well as the driver to measure the situation that they're in. Another one, again, as we stated before, if you have a deaf driver or someone who speaks another language, you're able to do a three-way call, as well as for a minor driving their parents' car. If you have some children that, they just want the keys, basically. They just want your keys. They don't know where your information is. And so they can actually have their parent there, but not physically there, virtually there, to help them and assist them if they're pulled over. Another one, a driver with social phobias. You have individuals who have anxiety, they have panic attacks, so this will minimize the intensity that they will feel if this is a new situation for them. So these are the different scenarios that the virtual traffic stop can be efficient in. So we're looking at the commercialization. One thing we would definitely like to see do is marketing, or this is what we're currently doing, is marketing to state and local governments and law enforcement agencies. So they'll be the ones that we market it to, and we will have this app free to the individuals who are driving. For the future work, we're looking to work with law enforcement to test, make sure this is something that works well within their environment and integrate suggested functionality. We will conduct pilots in small communities, again, make sure it works within this environment, and commercialize virtual traffic stop. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
I love the idea. It's really interesting, certainly relevant right now, and will continue to be relevant. Can you speak to me? It's an app-based system, so it requires a communication between the officer and the driver.
Correct.
What if there's no phone service? Can you speak to sort of the issue that might pose to something like that?
So in every police officers, when they have a laptop in their computer, they have some way of searching a database to query information. about the driver. So we would use that system. In the case where they don't have that communication, officers could still get out of their vehicle and conduct a traffic stop in the traditional sense. Again, virtual traffic stop isn't to prevent officers from ever getting out of their vehicle. It's just for certain instances that they consider to be routine.
I like the idea, but at the same time, I'm a software engineer and I'm writing mobile apps, and I know how precious having real estate in somebody's phone is. And I think it's a little unrealistic to expect everybody to have the app downloaded, and it'd be really hard to figure out who has it downloaded versus who doesn't. Another way of looking at this is you might be able to send a text message. So the officer already has the phone number, the driver's license, all that about the individual. If you were to send them a text message and you could interact through text instead, then you could overcome that barrier of having to have a mobile application installed and still send some sort of link where you could do the video conferencing. Have you guys thought about that?
So to speak to that, there are two separate instances. No one has to download Traffic Stop. If it's something that you would like to use, we would suggest you use it. The second thing is we don't store any user data. So there might be some people who are leery about providing the police with their phone number. So right now, no police officer has my phone number just offhand. So in that scenario, it would require officers to have access to driver's cell phone number. And so that's a privacy issue. We wanted to maintain the same level of privacy that's involved in a traditional traffic stop. So when an officer pulls me over, he doesn't have my phone number. In virtual traffic stop, we wouldn't want him to have that information unless you voluntarily gave it to him.
Yeah, but it seems like, adoption is a really important part of this. So is there some way you can incentivize people to give up part of their, maybe instead of the police department would say, okay, we'll give you 10% off on your fine if you use these apps, or, something like that.
Yeah, I know we've talked about the different insurance agencies would be interested in that as well. But one thing about the text messaging, you don't get the police doesn't get an insight of what's going on in the car. So when you have the app and they have it downloaded, they can see, what's going on. So say, for instance, my older car, it already had 10 on that car. So police officers would be skeptical on coming to the car. So every time they come to me, I would, let down the window. So that's one way where they can have that face-to-face interaction, that dynamic dialogue, real time. And so that's one reason why we chose the video.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the same face-to-face interaction. We didn't want to take that away. An officer who's been on the force for 30 years has certain instincts that he can sense certain things as he looks at a person. He can tell, maybe I do need to get out and investigate further. Using a text message, he doesn't get that face-to-face interaction.
How do you connect the users to the cop? So when you're being pulled over, do you open the app and say, I'm being pulled over?
Yeah, so the driver will open the app and say that they're being pulled over, and they will select the car that they're in, because many people drive more than one car. So you'll select the car that you're in, and then that will connect you to one side of the socket. And then when the police officer searches your license plate, they'll connect to the other side, and you'll both receive messages that the other party is connected, and then you'll be asked to send your license, the picture of yourself, registration, insurance, things like that.
You mentioned that it was future work to really work with law enforcement agencies, but I just wondered if you'd done any preliminary work to see, okay, what is their reaction? What would they most like to see in this?
Yes, so what's a great thing about our research lab at UF, we have a former police officer who works in our lab. So when we first started to come up with the idea, we talked to him about what's involved in the procedure of a traffic stop. I've only experienced it from one side. I don't know what happens, theoretically, hypothetically, if I were ever to have gotten a speeding ticket.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yes, I can imagine. But he has been inside of the police car. So he was able to tell us things like, how far do officers park from the person's car? What do they look for? What information do they need when they're talking to a person? What concerns do they have? Another reason we went with video chat is they mentioned in Florida, you can have your car windows very, very, very dark, so you can't even see in. So one of his concerns when he was conducting traffic stops was that he never knew what was going on inside of the car that he approached, and it was always a very tense situation for him. It could have been a very benign situation, but he just couldn't see inside the car, so he didn't know. So we spoke with him. Our advisor, Dr. Gilbert, spoke with some other police officers, and we're working with the Gainesville campus, the UF campus police, and with the city of Gainesville police, and we're hoping to pilot with those individuals. We've had anecdotal conversations with them about what they think what happens in a traffic stop. But when we do the actual testing, we want to conduct focus groups, maybe interviews, do some ride-alongs, and actually see traffic stop being used in the current situation.
One other question. You gave some statistics right at the beginning about how many result in an injury or a death. Is there information that's correlated with people, for example, who don't have insurance or who have some other police record? Because those are the people that are not going to download the app,
Right.
probably.
Right. So
And so you just want to make sure there's, sort of a market where people who will actually have the app that would reduce the statistics that you're talking
So
about.
though it was 2 data points accidentally and feloniously, so you mean somebody doing something really bad. So we like to say traffic stop is for good people who are approached by good people. Bad people are never gonna do the right thing because that's why they're bad people. Theoretically bad people.
Hopefully that's going to continue to be a smaller market.
Yes, yes. But we like to think that the vast majority of motorists and the vast majority of police officers are great people who, like Nikita said, just want to get home. That's all they want to do is, conduct their business, do their job, and get home. So our intent is to market it that way. This is not something that's keeping officers from the community or the communities from officers. This is just something that can be used in what an officer deems as a routine situation to save time and to keep both parties safe.
And then I had one other question. You talked earlier about, people have language difficulties or other reasons that prevent them from effectively communicating. So have you thought at all about other applications that actually don't have anything to do with traffic stops, but which could somehow also address a need where it's difficult to communicate, you want to pull in a third person? I don't know if you've done any brainstorming on that.
So we've thought about other technologies, that we can bring into traffic stop that already exist. For example, there are some translators that already exist. What happens if the translator at your local PD is busy helping someone else? You only have one in a small town. Well, can we use something that already exists and build that into the framework of virtual traffic stop? That way we can use some things that already exist. We don't have to have the physical manpower, but we can still have that third-party interaction. Any other
So
questions?
I'm going to ask a question about the patent. So you've applied for a patent.
Yes.
What's the primary claim in that patent?
So the primary claim is that nothing like this exists. So we're creating a new way to conduct traffic stops. Excuse me. Right now, the current situation is, as we described, you get out of your car face to face. This provides a whole new method, a whole new set of steps that officers would use to conduct this traffic stop. And not just traffic stops. If an officer is pulled over to assist a motorist who has a flat tire, or who is stranded on the side of the road, he can converse with him. So it's a whole new paradigm for officer-motorist communication.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we judges are going to head out and deliberate. You guys are welcome to get some refreshments. Please stay. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Drum roll. So we did a quick deliberation with the judges upstairs. First of all, the judges wanted to express to all the student teams how fantastic the presentations were. And we really appreciate the fact that you took this effort. Some of you came long ways. We just heard the last team spent the whole night in the airport last night, which is really something. So please, a round of applause for all the student teams. So, you know, these decisions are always difficult. It was actually fairly close amongst all the teams. They all presented very well and had strengths in some places and weaknesses in others. We're going to try to provide some feedback to all the teams on your presentation, particularly. But we have decided that the winner of the first NAI Student Invention Showcase is CoreWave. So come on up. Congratulations.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And just so you know, there's no money exchanging hands
Oh, there's
here.
not? They said a check for 100K.
Sorry, no check for 100K. There is going to be some mentoring from, you know, our fellows. And if any of the other student teams would like to get mentoring from fellows, we have fellows who are available and want to volunteer. So even though you were not the winner, you're welcome to come up and ask for that, and we'll try to make that happen. But please congratulate once again all the student teams, and particularly our winner, CoreWave. Dr. Sandberg, it's yours for the wrap.
I just want to, congratulations, by the way, very important in epilepsy, very important. Scary still. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for being here at the meeting, and I want to officially close the meeting and welcome you then next year to Washington for the next annual meeting. So congratulations, everyone. Thank you so much.